Discover the incredible moment I faced my daughter-in-law's heartwarming ultimatum. Days after my world crumbled, Jim stared blankly at the factory floor, where the machines once singing a relentless, hopeful tune now stood silent, like ghosts of a life he cherished. Just days ago, he had learned the factory was closing. The weight of it crashed down on him like a freight train, stealing his breath. His mind raced. What would become of his family? Would he still be the dependable father and foreman they knew? In the blink of an eye, his stalwart certainty crumbled, and now he felt adrift. The dim light of the factory flickered overhead, matching the anxiety pooling in his chest. He thought of his wife, Karen, and their kids, teenagers now, navigating their own stormy seas, and he wondered if they felt the cracks in their once solid foundation. Each morning, he clocked in, driven by the desire to provide the best for them. Now, he stood there, questioning his own worth. Could he still be the provider he prided himself on? As night fell, Emily, his daughter-in-law, appeared at his doorstep with a sense of urgency in her eyes. A single mother with the tenacity to navigate her own challenges, she didn't let the weight of the world crush her spirit. "Jim," she began, her voice steady yet warm, "we need to do something. Let us start a co-op. Not just for us, but for the whole community. We can lift everyone up together." Her words enveloped him. Hope flickered within the depths of his heart, wrestling for dominance with the fear that threatened to engulf him. What if he failed? What would that mean for Emily, for his family? The stakes felt impossibly high. Late into the night, they pored over plans, tossing around ideas and trying to conjure a vision of a bright future. But as dawn broke, unease settled in. A rival from his past, Ted, had always made an appearance like a bad penny, always looking to stir the pot. Jim's chest tightened with the thought of him lurking around, looking to muck up their dreams. At a town hall meeting days later, Jim stood, trembling. The air was thick as he faced the crowd, words bubbling up in his throat. He could hear whispers and doubt among familiar faces. The community that once felt so tight-knit was suddenly feeling divided. Would he confront the prejudices that had haunted his past, or would he stay silent to protect his family's reputation? Just then, Emily's gaze met his, unwavering. Her fierce determination ignited a spark within him. She reminded him that this wasn't just about them, it was about every struggling family in Maplewood. The tension hung heavy in the room, and in that moment, Jim felt the weight of his decision. Would he take the leap and stand up for his beliefs? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as Jim felt a glimmer of hope, Ted made his presence known, his voice slicing through the room like a blade. "This one work?" he challenged, dragging old wounds to the surface. The community shifted, caught between siding with the past or daring to believe in Jim and Emily's dream. Jim's heart raced, knowing that if he didn't act now, he could lose everything: his family, his integrity, the future of their town. Could he stand against the tide? Would love and loyalty really be enough to overcome the challenges ahead? As doubt clung to him like a heavy coat, he felt the ground shift beneath his feet. What choice would he make to rebuild the bonds that seemed to teeter on the edge? The answer hovered just out of reach, waiting to unfold in the chapters to come. The murmurs in the town hall intensified, a wave of uncertainty washing over the crowd. Jim gripped the podium, knuckles white. He had always been a man of action, a doer not a talker. Today, however, he found himself teetering on the precipice of his own fear, staring down the unyielding gaze of Ted and the hardened expressions among his neighbors. "Listen," Jim cleared his throat, the rasp of his voice echoing in the silence. "I know this seems impossible, but we can change things. Together." He scanned the room, searching for anything: a nod, a glimmer of understanding. Emily stood behind him, her eyes bright with unwavering belief. It fueled him. "We can create jobs, reignite a sense of community. This isn't just about me or Emily. It's about every family that's struggling out there. Ted scoffed, arms crossed, the embodiment of doubt. And what makes you think this town has the energy to start over? It's not that easy. No, it isn't. Jim snapped back, surprising even himself. But it's also not impossible. We've faced hardships before, and each time we found strength in unity. This is no different. A ripple of murmurs erupted, some skeptical, some intrigued. A couple of hands raised, and Jim's heart sped up. Was this his moment? He pressed on, his voice growing steadier. I've seen families lose hope, but I believe we can find it again together. Are we just going to stand by as our town crumbles, or will we fight for what we love? His chest swelled with a rush of adrenaline, and soon he was pouring out each emotion bottled up inside him, years of hard work, pride, and now fear threading through his words. The faces began to shift. A mother nodded in the back. Two men in the front leaned forward, their doubts slowly starting to dissolve. Let us start by looking at what we can build rather than what we've lost, Emily chimed in, her voice steady, radiating warmth. We all have skills, we all want a future for our kids. If we band together, we can turn these buildings, these memories into something new. Jim felt the collective energy in the room begin to shift. He caught sight of a few familiar faces, neighbors he'd had barbecues with and lent tools to over the years. There was courage in numbers, and he felt it swell around him, like a tide washing against the shore. Ted opened his mouth to respond, but Jim knew he had the upper hand now, even if it felt precarious. Don't you see? Jim called out, desperation slipping into determination. We can either cling to the past or carve a new path for ourselves. We choose hope over fear. Hope, murmured a voice from the crowd, barely above a whisper. The word sparked something, like a flame igniting a dry field, spreading as others began to echo the sentiment. Hope. Overwhelmed by the wave of emotion washing over him, Jim allowed himself a moment to breathe. This wasn't just about a co-op, it was about restoring faith in themselves, faith in each other. As the crowd began to respond, a sudden realization hit him: he couldn't do this alone. He needed everyone's support, their voices, their dreams woven together. But just as he thought he could drive this surge onward, Ted stepped forward with a challenging glint in his eye. If you're so sure of this, then what's your plan, Jim? An icy silence filled the room again as Jim laid his heart bare. He had ideas, visions, but he needed a clearer strategy. Suddenly, doubt crept back in, gnawing at him. Could he pull this off? Was hope enough? The meeting stretched on, but in that moment, he recognized this was far from over. The groundwork for their new future was laid, but the real battle would be in solidifying it. Could he rally the town, inspire their faith, and drag them into ambition that lay dormant for so long? As he looked around at the glimmers of hope reflected in the crowd, he knew one thing for sure: tomorrow would be pivotal. The challenge loomed large ahead, shrouded in uncertainty, but so did the promise of something better. What would he do when dawn broke? Would he rise to the occasion or crumble under the weight of expectation? The next morning, Jim woke before dawn, the chill of the early hours wrapping around him like a shroud. The events of yesterday played over and over in his mind like a reel of unsettling film. He sat up in bed, the blankets tangled around his legs, heart racing. The promise of a new day meant the daunting reality of needing a plan, a real one, not just the bravado he had summoned in that moment of passion that he downed a cup of coffee, the bitter brew doing little to quell the storm of thoughts swirling within him. It was time to start working on the details. What could he pitch to the town that would sound credible? A co-op? The idea still felt right, a glimmer of possibility, but he had to flesh it out. He needed details, people to help him, and resources to rely on. The enormity of it settled in his stomach like a lead weight at breakfast. He glanced at Emily, who was shuffling around the kitchen, her usual buoyancy tempered with a thoughtful frown. She sensed his tension. "What's wrong?" she asked, pausing to meet his gaze. "I need to pull together a solid plan, a meeting with those interested," he admitted. "This isn't just talk anymore, it's about putting real action in place." Emily stepped closer, reaching out, her hand on his arm. "You're not alone in this, you know. We'll figure it out together." Her words ignited a spark of hope, but as he mulled over ideas, doubts again clawed their way into his thoughts. Ted was right, change wasn't easy. Would the townsfolk rally behind them? If Jim stumbled in front of them again, would it push them away, burying the small glimmers of hope that had emerged? With a plan forming in his mind, he grabbed a notebook and headed out to walk the streets of his hometown. The familiar sights felt different today. The empty storefronts that once bustled with activity now stood silent and forlorn. He shook off the heavy thoughts, stopping to greet neighbors he passed, a wave here, a friendly nod there. Each smile rekindled a flicker of belief that a shift was possible. That he headed to the old diner, a place where laughter and warmth used to permeate the air. As Jim approached, he could see the closed sign hanging in the window, a bitter reminder of what was lost. But inspiration struck. He pushed open the door, and the creak startled the air, echoing in the empty space. Inside, he looked at the faded booths, the memories of shared meals, the community gatherings. This place could thrive again. Sitting at the counter, his mind raced. What if the diner reopened as a community hub? A place where local produce could be sold, where workshops could be held, where everyone felt connected. A sense of urgency surged as he envisioned it all coming together. He pulled out his notebook and began jotting down ideas: a community farming section, local art displays, skill workshops where residents could teach one another. With each word, confidence flooded back in. This was it. Just then, the door swung open, and in walked Mary, the waitress who had worked at the diner for decades. She froze, surprise etched on her face. "Jim. I thought this place was a lost cause." "No, not at all. It can be more than it was. Hear me out, Mary." He was suddenly bubbling with enthusiasm, the momentum of his ideas invigorating him. As they talked, Jim felt the energy building, shapes of hope solidifying into a plan. But in the back of his mind lingered the challenge of Ted and those who would resist change. How could he sway them, make them see this vision? Leaving the diner, the sun began to rise, casting golden rays that pierced through the clouds, warming his spirit. Today felt different. The fight was back in him. As he rounded the corner, the sight of the empty park ignited another thought: this couldn't just be about the diner. What if they took this beyond a single location? The town itself could be their canvas. He could rally them in the name of recovery from one distressed building to an entire community. Jim halted, heart pounding, realization washing over him. He'd need to gather people again, not just to listen, but to inspire, to believe in this communal chance at revitalization. How would he convince them all to embrace a larger dream? As he walked home, determination surged within him. But this time, he wouldn't face the challenge alone. He would gather stories of resilience, the kind of stories that resonated and ignited belief. If he could weave a tapestry of shared experiences, lives intertwined, maybe, just maybe, he could turn fear into a collective dream. What if the key to their revival rested in unity, in their stories? Tomorrow, he would reach out. But first, there was one more surprise he had to encounter that would change everything. Jim stepped through the door and into the sunlight, the warmth wrapping around him like a comforting embrace. He had a plan forming in his mind, an idea that stirred excitement within him. But amid that excitement was the nagging question of how to make it happen. Moving past his thoughts, he decided to head to the local library, a beacon of knowledge and a gathering spot for the community. As he approached the library, memories washed over him: kids laughing, families reading together, the aroma of books mingling with freshly brewed coffee. In that moment, he realized this wasn't just about the diner. It was about breathing life back into every corner of their town. He hurried inside, eager to sort through resources that could help bring his vision to life. Finding a quiet corner, Jim began to dig into community planning books and research articles. He was jotting down notes when a familiar voice interrupted him. "Jim." Startled, he looked up to see Sarah, the librarian. A bright smile graced her face. "I didn't expect to see you here today. What brings you in?" "Oh, just a little brainstorming," he replied, desperate to mask the whirl of chaotic thoughts running through his head. She leaned against the table, curiosity gleaming in her eyes. "Brainstorming? About what?" After a brief hesitation, Jim opened up. I want to bring the diner back and turn it into a community hub. But I think it could be bigger than that, something that involves the entire town. Sarah's expression shifted, deepening into contemplation. That sounds ambitious, but ambitious is good. What do you need? I need resources, help in organizing everything, he admitted, feeling vulnerable yet hopeful. And maybe someone to help tell our story. Count me in, Jim. I think I know several people who would love to help. We could hold community meetings right here. Her enthusiasm was infectious, adding fuel to Jim's fire. Just as his hope began to rise, his phone buzzed insistently in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw a message from Emily. Can we talk? It's important. His heart clenched. There was a mix of dread and urgency in her words, but he focused instead on the light Sarah had sparked. Returning his gaze to her, he said, "This is just the beginning. We can create a real buzz." Sarah nodded, her excitement mirroring his. "We'll need a plan for the meetings, then a way to get people excited." Jim felt a shift within the air. They brainstormed ideas, each concept flourishing as they threw more on the table. Flyers, social media posts, even community events to draw people in. It felt right. Jim's heart swelled as hope washed over him. Leaving the library, Jim was flying high. The possibilities seemed endless, and as he stepped back onto the street, he felt the sun warm his face once more. But as he approached home, thoughts of Emily tugged at him. He couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling that this call for a talk was significant. Once inside, he found Emily seated at the kitchen table, a look of determination painting her features. She motioned for him to sit down. The kitchen felt like a battleground, yet familiar and reassuring. "Jim, we need to talk about your plan," she began, her voice steady, but he could see concern flickering in her eyes. "I love that you want to bring change, but I'm worried about the risks." He opened his mouth to reassure her, but the gravity of her words pressed down on him. It wasn't just about ambition, it was about navigating fears and doubts. As they locked eyes, something slipped into focus. If they were going to thrive, they'd have to face this together, no matter how challenging things became. But just then, a loud knock echoed through the house, splitting the moment like thunder. Who could that be? Jim's heart raced as he and Emily exchanged glances, uncertainty swirling between them. As he walked to the door, an apprehensive thought crossed his mind. What if this visitor was the key to either igniting their hopes or crushing their dreams? He opened the door, breath held tight in his chest, ready for whatever was on the other side. The door creaked open, and Jim's breath evaporated as he recognized the figure standing in front of him. It was Tommy, his old friend from high school, but the years had carved a deeper seriousness into his face. Uncertainty flickered in Tommy's eyes, quickly masked by a friendly smile. "Jim, hey. Long time, no see," Tommy began, but his tone was cautious. There was a weight to their reunion that neither of them could ignore. "Tommy. Wow, it's great to see you," Jim responded, trying to shake off his apprehension. He stepped aside, gesturing for Tommy to come in, but his heart raced. Had Tommy come to deliver bad news? Once inside, Tommy glanced toward Emily, who remained seated at the table. Her brows furrowed, the tension hanging thick in the air. "Everything okay?" Jim asked, biting his lip. "Not exactly." Tommy shifted on his feet, his smile faltering. "I've been hearing some things around town, and I thought you might want to know." Jim exchanged a concerned look with Emily before turning back to Tommy. "What things?" "People are worried about your diner idea," Tommy said, lowering his voice. "They think it's too big. That it's going to fail and drag you down with it." Jim felt a cold splash of reality hit him. "But it's not just a diner. It's a community hub." His voice hitched with frustration. "I can't just." Tommy cut him off gently. I know. But I'm not here to crush your dreams. I just wanted you to know how people feel. And Emily might want to know too." He met her gaze, and Jim could see the tension growing. Emily's arms crossed defensively. "You think we shouldn't pursue this?" "It's not that simple," Tommy said. There's a lot of history in this town. Not everyone will embrace change so easily. They're scared, just like you were about the risks. She opened her mouth, ready to argue, but Jim held up a hand, urging her to listen. He didn't want their discussion about the diner to fracture further. He leaned toward Tommy, felt the weight of uncertainty bearing heavy on all their shoulders. So what do we do? Jim asked, searching his friend's eyes for answers. Hide. Give up. Tommy shook his head. Not at all. Just consider how to approach this differently. Maybe hold a few smaller gatherings first. Listen to their concerns. Show them what you hope to do. A silence fell over the room, the unspoken weight of his words hanging between them. Emily's posture softened as she exchanged looks with Jim, a small spark of understanding igniting. Could we make a space for everyone? Emily asked quietly. Open the floor to discuss our plan? Make it more inclusive? Yes. Exactly that. Tommy exclaimed, his nervousness fading into enthusiasm. People thrive when they feel heard. That's how you can turn doubts into allies. Jim realized a fire was flickering back to life within him. A new path emerged before them, one that wasn't just about dreaming big but about dreaming together. They could build this, but they would need to empathize with their neighbors' fears. Let us plan a meeting, Jim said, determination coloring his voice. A gathering where people can come and share. We can talk about the diner, and also make it about them. Emily smiled at him, a sense of solidarity radiating between them. And we can invite Tommy to share his insights. That way, people will know we're listening. There you go, Tommy nodded, visibly relieved. Together, we can turn this into something real. As they plotted out the details, ideas flowed from the table, buzzing with renewal and hope. But just as Jim felt the energy building, another thought crept into his mind. Was turning the tides of their neighbors' opinions about to become the greatest challenge of his life? A sudden knock shook the house again, even louder than before. Jim's heart faltered. Was this the real test of their resolve? As he turned toward the door, uncertainty gnawed at him once more. Who would walk through that door next? Would it be someone with more doubts, or perhaps a long-lost friend ready to offer unexpected help? Jim hesitated, every muscle in his body tense. He exchanged a quick glance with Emily, who looked as uncertain as he felt. Tommy straightened up, shooting them both a questioning look before taking a step back. Should I? No, stay, Jim said, his voice steadying despite the rapid thump of his heart. Whatever it is, we tackle it together. He took a deep breath and opened the door. Standing there was an elderly woman, her weathered face familiar yet unexpected. It was Mrs. Hargrove, the town's unofficial historian. The soft curl of her white hair framed her face, and her hands clutched a thick stack of papers. The moment Jim saw her, a mix of nostalgia and worry settled over him. Jim! She exclaimed, her eyes lighting up with recognition. Oh, my dear. I hope it's not too much trouble to come back into your lives. Emily stepped closer, intrigued, while Tommy shifted on his feet, still in the entryway. Mrs. Hargrove, it's good to see you. What brings you here? Jim asked, a smile breaking through his anxiety. Oh, honey, I just heard some news floating about town and I couldn't help but feel that this diner idea could be a beautiful blessing for our community. She waved the papers slightly, as if they were the last bits of history that could turn things around. Is that so? Jim said, his curiosity piqued. What do you mean? She flipped through the pages, revealing maps and photos of the old diner at the center of Main Street. Back in the day, this town thrived around communal spaces. My friends and I spent countless afternoons there. If you can bring it back, you might just rekindle that spirit. Caught off guard, Jim's heart raced again, but this time with hope. But people are worried, Mrs. Hargrove. They think it's too big. She shook her head, a fierce glint in her eyes. Every great change starts with fear. Listen, what's important is the foundation. You could honor the old while breathing new life into the town. Think of events, activities, even story nights sharing our town's history. Emily seemed to light up. That actually sounds amazing. We could start a bridge between generations. Yes. Tommy chimed in, his earlier doubts dissipating like mist in the morning sun. The past and future could share a table. People like Mrs. Hargrove can help you connect. Jim felt a fire igniting in his chest, fueled by this unexpected support. Mrs. Hargrove, would you help us share your story? We can host community dialogues, feature these memories. She smiled brightly, revealing the warmth in her heart. My dear boy, I would love nothing more than to see this town bloom again. Count me in. As the trio buzzed with ideas, Jim realized that perhaps the journey wasn't just about the diner but about healing and bringing memories to life. Yet, as the conversation grew, a small voice in the back of his mind echoed a different question. Would they really manage to weave everyone's fears into a narrative that uplifted all, or would this spark of enthusiasm be extinguished by deeper roots of skepticism? Before he could voice that concern, another knock echoed once more, this time more insistent. The air tightened around them. Jim glanced at Emily and Tommy. Another visitor? Something told him the real challenge was just beginning. Who would it be this time, and what more could they add to the ever-evolving story? Jim tightened his grip on the doorknob. The steady thuds of the new knock sent a ripple of unease through him. He took a moment, glancing at Emily and Tommy. They appeared just as wary. With a nod indicating they were all in this together, he opened the door once more. Standing in the doorway this time was a man Jim hadn't seen in years. Greg. His childhood friend, now turned mayor of the town, stood tall, but his shoulders sagged with an unknown burden. Behind him, a handful of townsfolk loitered, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Jim, Greg said, his voice lower than usual, like the weight of the world rested heavily upon him. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, Jim replied. Come in. We're just talking about the diner. He stepped aside, inviting them in. Tom and Emily exchanged glances, something unspoken passing between them. As Greg entered, he pulled off his cap and fidgeted with it like a schoolboy caught in a moment of indecision. I heard you were back and taking a shot at reviving the diner. His eyes darted to the papers still in Mrs. Hargrove's hands. And it sounds like you already have some support. Yes, we do, Emily interjected, her enthusiasm palpable. Mrs. Hargrove is ready to share her stories and memories about the diner. It could really unite the community. Greg nodded, but his expression remained somber. That's great. But he paused, taking a breath as if wrestling with words that had grown heavy in his chest. The town is divided right now, Jim. This diner projects some see it as a beacon of hope. Others they think it will reopen old wounds. The warmth in the air shifted, a chill creeping in. Jim felt the tension rise, sensing the fragile excitement they'd been building. What do you mean? Not everyone remembers the past fondly. The diner closed for a reason. There are people who lost jobs, families hurt by circumstances surrounding it, Greg replied, his gaze firm yet sympathetic. You might not just be opening a diner. You're stirring emotions many would rather keep buried. Surely, there are ways to honor the past without dwelling on the pain, Jim offered, hopeful but wary. Greg shook his head slowly. Change is never easy, Jim. Your heart is in the right place, but you need to brace yourself. People don't just want food and fun, they want their stories heard. They want a platform to speak, not just reminisce. Or else what? Tommy interjected, fists clenched at his sides. Or else this could turn into a battleground rather than the communal space you're dreaming of, Greg cautioned, a note of urgency in his voice. Jim felt a knot tightening in his stomach, the weight of responsibility crashing down. He looked at Mrs. Hargrove, at Emily and Tommy, and saw the concern mirrored in their eyes. This was bigger than just food, it was a risk, a chance to either heal or hurt. As murmurs rippled through the group, the room thick with tension, a woman stepped forward from the crowd. If you want my story, you'd better be ready for the truth, she said boldly, a mix of defiance and vulnerability in her voice. Jim's heart raced. Who was this woman? What story was she holding? And how would it shape the future of their diner? With that chilling introduction, Jim knew they were about to embark on an unpredictable journey, one that would demand all of their courage. Would they be able to gather their disparate histories and create something beautiful, or would those memories tear them apart? The crossroads lay ahead, and they had to decide which path to take. Jim's breath caught in his throat as he studied the woman who had stepped forward. Her fiery gaze cut through the tension, filled with years of untold stories and pent-up emotions. She couldn't have been more than mid-40s, with hair that gently curled around her face, framing a look of quiet determination. "Who are you?" he managed to ask, hoping to draw her out, to understand the storm brewing just beneath her words. "My name is Rosa," she said, her voice firm yet tinged with a tremor that betrayed her nerves. "I used to work here, at the diner. And I lost everything when it closed." A stunned silence enveloped the room. Emily took a step closer, her concern palpable. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea." Rosa's eyes softened, but the intensity of her emotions remained. "No one does. People left town, families fell apart. I tried to keep it together, but the diner was more than just a job. It was home." When it closed, her voice cracked, and she paused, swallowing hard. "It felt like a part of me died." The murmurs among the small crowd started up again, a merging of understanding and conflicting thoughts. Jim felt the weight of this moment. Rosa was representing so many stories, silent hearts that had bled each day the diner remained shuttered. "What do you want from us?" he asked, gentleness punctuating his tone. "I want the truth to come out," Rosa replied, gathering strength. "If we're going to talk about reopening the diner, we need to acknowledge what it meant to all of us. The highs, the lows, the full spectrum of life that happened in those walls while the world moved on outside." With a steely resolve, Greg nodded as if he'd been waiting for this moment. "Rosa is right. We can't erase the past. If we're going to move forward, we need to bring everyone together. Not just the happy memories but the hard ones too." Jim's heart raced, tension and hope cycling through him. What if we create a space for those stories? An open mic night, for example? A way for everyone to share good, bad, all of it. Rosa studied him carefully. "You think people will show up? To relive their pain in front of strangers? If they know it's safe, if they know they're heard, maybe they'll come." "Maybe we can change things together," Jim replied, his voice steady despite the swirling doubts. "People were angry when the diner closed," Tommy cautioned, crossing his arms. "Some still are." "You're asking for a lot, Jim." "I know," he said, meeting each of their gazes with sincerity. "But if we open this door, perhaps we can create something real. A space where we can all heal. Isn't that worth the risk?" Rosa softened visibly, the fight in her eyes fading just a touch. "Yeah. Maybe it is, but you'd have to be ready for the kind of truth that cuts deep." The air was electric, the possibilities both exciting and terrifying. Jim felt the weight of everyone's eyes on him, past judgments mixed with glimmers of hope. "Then let us do it," he said, decisively. "Let us provide a space for those truths." As the notion settled, a silence fell over the group, a moment suspended in time. Jim could almost hear the echoes of laughter and heartbreak from the diner, ghosts whispering their approval, but as they nodded cautiously, a shuffle from the back of the crowd caught his attention. A man, gaunt and balding, stepped forward, his expression grave. "And what if the truth is darker than you think? Are you prepared for that?" Jim's heart raced once again. What truth lingered silently in the shadowed corners of their past? He could feel the walls closing in around him, each second a reminder that they were standing on the brink of something monumental. Are we truly ready to face what we've buried? He wondered silently, with a nagging question that reverberated through the dim room. With uncertainty hanging in the air like the scent of impending rain, Jim knew they were all about to find out. The room felt charged, each breath taken with hesitant anticipation. Jim's heart thudded loudly in his chest as every pair of eyes seemed to search for courage within him. The man's question, the haunting shadow of truth loomed over them, heavy like storm clouds before a thunderstorm. Rosa stepped forward, her voice echoing the collective fear. What do you mean by darker? Her eyes narrowed, searching for clarity. The man shifted uneasily. I'm Nick. I've seen what happens when you try to dig into buried things. Secrets don't just stay quiet. They scream, sometimes. Like the time the diner was forced to close, it wasn't just business, it was personal. A murmur rippled through the group. Jim turned to Nick, hoping to coax out what lay behind the gaunt face. What do you know? What happened? Nick rubbed the back of his neck as if trying to massage away the memories. The town didn't just lose a diner. It lost people, connections. Some had debts. Others had grief. The closure tore through families who relied on that place for a sense of community. No one wanted to talk about it then. But maybe we should have. This was deeper than Jim had imagined. The diner wasn't just a building, it was a metaphorical heart that had stopped beating for a whole town. Each individual stood as a pulse, now restless and yearning for clarity. Why don't you tell us more? Jim urged, his voice steady. We can't face what we don't know. If we want to heal, we need to understand. Nick glanced at Rosa, who nodded, a strong alliance forming between them. It's not just pain, Jim. There was betrayal, love lost. People placed blame anywhere they could. I had a brother, we used to sit at the counter. After the diner closed, Nick broke off, choked with emotion. He spiraled. I wasn't there to help him. I should have listened. If I had known how much it meant. The room fell into a stillness as the weight of those words settled over them. Some people shifted uncomfortably, while others exchanged glances, a chorus of silent acknowledgments filling the air. Jim felt a sharp pang in his chest. How many stories like Nick's remained untold? We can't save everyone, but we can start talking, Rosa said, her voice fierce, inspiring. That's the first step. I want to believe that, Jim replied softly. But how do we even start? A voice rang out unexpectedly from the back. Sarah, a woman whose family had been woven tightly into the fabric of the diner's history. We speak, she said, her tone urgent yet fragile. We gather those stories, all of them. We can create a memorial night. Something that honors every single memory. We can't change the past, but we can make sure it's not forgotten. Jim turned towards her, hope sparking in his chest. That's it. We make it an event where we share the laughter and the tears, the love and the anger. Nick's expression softened slightly. But it won't be easy. Some people resent what happened. They might not come. It doesn't matter, Rosa interjected, passion flickering in her eyes. If we build it, they will come. They'll want to be heard. It'll be worth it. Nods of agreement began to ripple through the crowd. Jim could feel a wave of energy building, something raw and vital awakening in the room. It was terrifying, yet thrilling. Were they truly ready to dive into those depths? Would these forgotten stories bring them closure or more pain? Just then, as hope illuminated the dim atmosphere, the door creaked open. A figure stepped in, silhouetted against the fading light. Everyone turned, breaths on hold, minds racing. Who was it? What new truth might they bring into this fragile moment? Jim's pulse quickened, wondering if this would solidify their united front or shatter the tenuous bond they had just begun to forge. What stories lay in store now, hidden within the shadows of their past? The moment felt electric, charged with anticipation as the figure stepped inside. The door swung wide, and standing there was Daniel, not just anyone, but the former owner of the diner. He looked older, his face lined with the weight of years and regrets. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on him. The walls seemed to squeeze closer, as if the very fabric of their community held its breath. Daniel, Jim breathed, heart pounding. The presence of the man who had once been at the helm of it all was both a blessing and a curse. It's been a long time. The eyes of the room danced between anticipation and tension. Daniel stepped forward, hesitant yet resolute. I wasn't sure I should come, he admitted, voice wavering, eyes locking onto Jim's. But I heard you were trying to bring the diner back, and I thought it was time to face the music. What do you mean? Rosa stepped closer, urgency threading through her voice. You were a part of this town's heart. We need your voice in this. Daniel took a deep breath, his chest rising as if summoning courage. I thought I could save it, but the mistakes I made cost more than just a rundown building. I lost my family, my friends. I turned my back on what really mattered. Pain seeped into his words, resonating deeply in the room. But we can change that, Jim said, finding strength in his own voice. We're not here to point fingers. We want to hear the truth to understand and grow. Daniel's gaze softened, the flood of memories washing over him like a wave. I've spent too long running from that truth. If you're really trying to revive it, this isn't just about food, it's about healing. About reconnecting with the people we let down, including each other. Slowly, murmurs of agreement unfurled around the room. Jim could feel the shift, the thawing of something brittle and rigid. They were all standing together now, a congregation formed not just from a desire to resurrect a building but from a shared humanity, a craving for connection. Maybe this is it, Jim said, his heart racing. An open dialogue. We can create a night to share not just our hopes, but our fears too. We could gather everyone's stories, yours included, Daniel. People need a chance to say what they feel. Would people even want to listen? Daniel's eyes reflected doubt. Or will they just remember the failures? They'll listen, Rosa asserted. Because we are all carrying this past, and if we let it consume us, we may never move forward. Daniel took a step forward, uncharacteristically vulnerable. If you think people will come together to share their stories, I'll be there. I'll help. Maybe I can even facilitate some of those conversations. Hope coursed through Jim like a fresh breeze. We can start with your story, Daniel. It may just be the beginning everyone needs. Let us turn the diner into a healing space, not just a restaurant. The people around them began nodding, a ripple effect of agreement, as Jim watched connections reforge from the ashes of neglect and misunderstanding. There was so much pain to unravel, but there was also a shared strength, an undeniable resolve to heal. Suddenly, for the first time, Jim didn't feel alone in this fight. Let us call it a night of truth, Emily suggested, her voice brightening the somber atmosphere. We can open the floor to anyone who wishes to share their experience, pain, joy, or simply memories of what the diner meant to them. Yes. Greg's voice rang out, the energy building. This could be a catalyst for our town to break down barriers that have held us back for too long. As the air vibrated with renewed purpose, Daniel's eyes glimmered with what looked like hope and emotion he thought long lost. All right, let's do this. I'll bring people in. They need to know they're heard. They began mapping it out, details unfolding rapidly: the date, the layout, who would invite whom. The diner wasn't just a structure, they were piecing together a living tapestry. Jim's heart swelled as he looked around the room, feeling the power of unity coursing through them all. As they worked, the sun slipped behind the horizon, casting a warm golden hue that enveloped them. It felt like a promise, a signal that despite the shadows of yesterday, a new dawn was approaching. Finally, when the talking quieted, Rosa looked directly at Jim. You know, it wouldn't have been possible without you. You took a leap of faith when we really needed it. Tears pricked at the corners of his eyes, tears of gratitude and relief. He was filled with awareness that they had chosen to forge ahead together despite the storm's weight. As the waves of their stories began to intertwine, he realized they weren't just trying to save the diner, they were resurrecting their community. In that space, the air was charged with potential and determination. The doubts still lingered like echoes in the back of Jim's mind, but hope was a louder chorus now, stronger and possessing an unwavering melody. They were embarking on a journey of discovery that could uproot pain and plant seeds of resilience, renewal, and love deep within their community. Together, as they prepared to face the truths ahead, Jim couldn't shake the feeling that everything had led to this moment. They could build not just a diner, but a sanctuary, a symbol of what it meant to rise from the ashes, hand in hand. As they gathered their resolve and stepped into tomorrow's promise, a collective rallying call surged through them. It was their time for truth, for healing, for unity. This was just the beginning. So here's the deal, folks. If you're moved by this story of resilience and transformation, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel. Don't wait not even one more second to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover this journey we just shared together. Comment your thoughts and feelings about this heartwarming ending. Your perspective matters, and I urge you to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation unfold. Let them witness the power of community and love. Together we can inspire change.